Laura. I'm a therapist, and I have a private counseling practice in Chandler called Benevari Counseling. And I work with moms and kids on helping them heal attachment trauma and build healthy relationships. Um, and I really, my favorite thing to do is teach moms how to attune to their kids and how to understand how much that matters, and really just what showing up does to the child's nervous system and their brain and their ability to develop, and then for them to have a future full of healthy relationships. And so I'm really excited to be able to give you guys a little bit of information today about that and how you can support your girls in developing healthy relationships and standing up for themselves and setting boundaries and making sure that they're not mistreated. I think when we were all growing up, we just had a really different landscape, and I don't think there's a lot of there's not really a blueprint for this, what's happening now. And it's really hard to teach our kids how to interact with other people effectively in real life. And kids now are experiencing tons and tons of social anxiety because they haven't ever really had an opportunity in like their most important developmental years to interact with people in real life. When school closed and then it goes back and then it closed again and goes back, it's really hard for them to develop a firm sense of their self and how to really be with other people and what to expect out of that. So I've seen a lot of like just anxiety from these kids. And so hopefully today you guys can get some information that'll help you be able to support them through that and help them grow and develop the way that they deserve to. And so I'm just really glad you're here, and I'm grateful that you brought them. And so there's three main things that we'll talk about, and just high level kind of understanding what these are: attachment, and our attachment system and how that really impacts our ability to have healthy relationships. Something called neuroception, which is how our brain sees the world before it tells us what's happening in the world. And then co-regulation, and how you can help support your girls in developing their own ability to keep themselves safe in healthy relationships. Neuroception is how our brain sees the world, right? So our brain is constantly scanning for safety and danger. That's our whole organismic need, is to not die. So it's going to keep us alive by looking around and identifying things that might be dangerous or that can keep us safe. And so there's three different ways that we take in information, and there's three different sort of channels that we process information and identify safety and danger and how we're going to react to that. And the first way that we do that is through what's called our affect perception, which makes more sense if I just call it vibes, right? Like if you get a weird vibe, it's kind of just if somebody's off, right? You can kind of tell. You're like, this is a weirdo. I don't want to interact with them, right? Or like, I don't know, if your kid comes home and they're like, oh, I'm fine, but like, they're not fine. They're not fine, but they're not saying they're not fine. They're smiling maybe. They're maybe even acting like everything's cool, but you could just tell, right? You're reading their affect. That's part of our neuroception. Our neuroception is designed for us to be able to read micro clues that our brain isn't actually telling us about. So we might not know exactly what we're seeing that makes it clear that they're not fine, but our brain is saying like something's off here. Because as a human baby, we have to read all of the people who are caring for us, right? So that's why this sense is the most important. It has the highest survival value. It's the one that our body and our brain puts the highest priority on when it's interpreting data from the world around us, is our affect perception. Is this person safe or dangerous? Because if you think about a human baby, they can't make it on the streets. Like, people have to care for them, right? So they are being passed around. Like there's got all these adults, like people, they don't know anything. They have no cognition, right? They're a baby. But they have to know whether or not somebody is going to be nice to them, or if somebody's going to be mean to them, if they're going to get harmed, or if they're going to be safe. And so affect is really, really critically important. And most of the time we tell ourselves to ignore that, right? Like, oh, this is just me, like I'm overreacting, right? Like I'm being judgmental, or I'm wrong somehow. But no, you're not. If somebody seems off, they're probably off. You're not wrong. You might not know exactly what's happening, right? So you might not actually have like the facts about it, but the vibes, they're not wrong. Something's happening, right? So you can read that. You can read that in your kids, and your kids can read that in you. That's their job. They are very, very good at it. A child's job is to regulate their parents' affect. Because if you're good, they're going to be good. So they're constantly seeking information from you to know, are you going to be nice to them? Are you safe? Are you dangerous? Right? Are you stressed? Are you in a bad mood? I asked one of the first questions I asked the girls, can you tell if it's a bad time to ask your mom for something? Yep, sure can. How can you tell? I don't know. I can just tell, right? So they're reading you at all times. They're looking to see whether or not you're safe or dangerous. And if you are safe consistently and predictably, that will help them build a foundation, a framework that will support their ability to trust themselves going forward, right? So that's thing number one. That's thing number one of how you can help them build healthy relationships without even talking to them about relationships, is to be predictably safe. Because what happens when a caregiver is saying they're safe, but they're not safe, when we're like, hey, come to me, tell me everything, like you can trust me, right? And then they come and tell you, and then you're like, well, that was so stupid of you. Why did you do that? I don't know. Sorry. Right? Like you're just like the kid doesn't know now, right? So then they're like, okay, but you said for me to, but then okay. So like now it's like this electric fence situation, right? Where the kid is kind of gonna reach, they're gonna be like, hey, like, is it cool, right? And they're just like waiting to see if you're gonna slap them down. And so that will carry with them their inability to read sense of cues, safety cues and danger cues, right? So they'll lack the discernment that they need. So one thing you can do is be predictably safe. And if you're not, because you're stressed and because you're a human with a nervous system and nobody's just calm and cool and collected all the time, you can say that out loud, right? Like, let's say your kid comes up to you and says something and then you snap at them because you just stubbed your toe, I don't know, whatever, but you're in a bad mood. You can be like, you know what, that was my bad. That wasn't about you. I just actually am really stressed out. And so I lost my temper, and that wasn't fair, and that wasn't your fault. So if we could talk about that thing in a little while when I'm in a better place to treat you the way you deserve to be treated, that would be great, right? So you're just enforcing like, hey, you're right that was bad of me to do that, right? So your instincts are correct. That was not a safe interaction. I'm telling you why, and it wasn't your fault, and that was on me. So now you're reinforcing that it's not their fault if someone is ever mean to them. Because what keeps us in abusive relationships? The mind, the manipulation, the not trusting yourself. Believing that what the other person is telling you about you and what you deserve and what you're capable of and how you're affecting them and how you deserve to be treated the way you're being treated, that is because you don't understand what's real and what's not. And so as a kid, that's when you learn whether or not you're right about whether or not something is safe or dangerous. So parents can really do a good job of reinforcing that. Caregivers, every adult's job in every child's life is to keep them physically and emotionally safe. That's always the goal in every interaction. And if we do that, just that, our kids will not grow up and be in abusive relationships. Our kids will not grow up and be abusers, right? They won't hurt other people because they don't need to, because they were safe and they don't have to go in and reenact those old patterns. They don't have to do that because they're already good. And so our sensory and cognitive channels, senses, our five senses, right? Like, is this hot? Is it sharp? Can I step here or will I fall, right? Those are sensory ways that we keep ourselves safe. So that's another way that our brain is taking in information. And so if our child understands that like physical touch is okay or not okay, right? Like that hurts, but this person is telling me that it's not hurtful. Well, now I'm confused. I don't trust my own body to tell me what's okay. So that's going to disconnect me from my body in some way. So as parents, we can teach our kids that certain touch, like if it's not comfortable, then you can say that and it's not okay and you're not wrong, right? So when we send mixed messages, then they go out and believe mixed messages. So that's why it's really important for us to be predictably safe and consistent when they say, hey, that hurt. And then we feel bad because we didn't mean to hurt them. And then we go, no, it didn't. It wasn't that bad. Well, I get it because that made me feel bad that I made them feel bad. And now I'm in this whole like mom guilt cycle, right? But I need to get out of that and be like, oh man, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry that hurt you. Let me acknowledge that happened and apologize instead of try to convince you that I didn't hurt you because I didn't mean to hurt you, right? We do that because we feel guilty or whatever. So the less we do that, the more often we validate and we acknowledge their experience instead of minimizing or denying it, the more capable they'll be at requiring that from someone in the future, because that's what we want for them. We want somebody to treat them with that dignity and respect. And so we have to do it first. And so those are some of the things that you can do without even talking about relationships, but help them build a foundation and a framework for what they need in order to have a healthy relationship. And so the last thing is cognitive processing. These are our thoughts and our ideas, our language. This is how we make meaning of the first two. What we don't realize, and I don't know why we're so backwards on this, but cognitive processing has the least survival value. None. It actually, if we're in danger, our cognitive processing system, that channel in our brain, gets turned off, switched off. It's not necessary. It's actually going to slow us down. It's probably going to make us less likely to survive if we're in an emergency. And so our affect and our senses, those are the first two and the highest priority senses, and how we take in information and what our brain and body uses to determine whether or not our environment and our life is safe or dangerous. And so our cognition, when we try to tell somebody that what they're feeling or sensing is wrong, that's when things get a little haywire. That's when we start to not know how to regulate our own nervous system. That's when we start to be in that fight or flight mode all the time. It's because what the world is telling me, or what the people who are caring for me, or what the school, or what the society, or what the social media is telling me, is that what I'm feeling and sensing is somehow off, and that I'm supposed to be feeling these things and thinking these ways. And so that can get a little wonky. And so when we're dysregulated, that cognitive system isn't working properly. It's not going to help us. And so that's why you can't really have a logical conversation with a kid when they're having a hard time. So when your kid is coming home and saying like, oh, my friends are being mean or whatever, and you're like, well, you don't have to put up with that. And they're like, but yes, I do. And then it's like a whole thing. It's probably because they're feeling that affect and the sensory stuff. So they're feeling like they're in danger, right? They're going to lose this friend. They're going to be alone forever. They're probably going to die. Logicking them through that is not going to work because their cognitive is turned off. So what we have to do is we have to kind of accept what they're going through, right? We have to say like, wow, I hear what you're saying is really hard. And that person hurt your feelings a lot. And it's confusing and it's difficult to feel like you're in a disagreement with your friend. I'm sorry that's happening for you right now. So we just let their truth be their truth. And then we can talk through how to handle it. Then we can actually teach them, right? We make the mistake sometimes of trying to teach when they're in that first phase of like, I'm going to die. Everything's the worst. And it's not going to go anywhere. And then we're mad because they never learn anything because they don't listen. But you're right, they don't listen because they're feeling like they're going to die. And so their brain has told them that that's not necessary right now. So we want to make sure that we're helping them sort of stay in that safe zone And we can do that by acknowledging their experience and recognizing what's happening, and that the information their brain is taking in maybe isn't all the facts, but it's at least what's happening for them. And we can help them calm down, and then we can help them learn. And so when we think about safety and danger, children experience safety and danger in a very specific and unique way. And that's mostly filtering back to their attachment system. Because, right, human babies, we have to have a caregiver or we will die because we can't make it on the streets. We're a baby, right? So that attachment figure is the single most important source of safety and survival. And so our attachment system really runs our nervous system. And so danger is felt in the sense of an attachment loss. So if a child is feeling like they're not being accepted, they're feeling, now they're like, I'm gonna literally die. Because that's how strong a childhood attachment need is, because they have to have a caregiver, they have to attach, they're completely dependent, right? And so that's why relationships are so hard. Because how can I stand up to this person who's hurting me when they're actually the person who's taking care of me, and if I don't have them in my life, I'm gonna die, and if I stand up for them, they're gonna leave me. Well, now we're just in a pickle, right? So we have to help them know that they are not gonna die if these other people are not in their lives anymore, because we're their safety. Like, I've got you. That's what they need from us. They need to know that they are accepted, that they are okay, that they are safe at all times. They're physically and emotionally safe, because that's my job, and that's what they deserve. And the more safety they have at home, the more safety they will demand and expect from the world and from the people that they interact with when it's their choice. And so for us as adults, things get a little hairy, because nothing triggers our own attachment trauma like our children. So our system gets very confused when our child is in distress. So a childhood attachment system is self-oriented, it's completely dependent, it's life and death. An adult attachment system is still happening, right? We still need people, we can't be alone, right? So an adult attachment system, though, is more about community survival. That's the evolutionary need from an adult attachment system. It's because we need to make more people, right? So we have to have a tribe, we have to have a crowd, we have to have people. And so as an adult, we can know that many different people in many different roles can meet our needs. And we can know that if I'm alone in this room, I'm still safe. And being alone doesn't mean I'm gonna die, because I can keep myself safe, right? So the loss of that relationship is not life or death for an adult. However, most of us forget that about like 50% of the time. So it's really hard for us as adults to maintain healthy relationships, right? Like, who has a hard time standing up to their passive aggressive mom, or like their, abusive boss, or whatever, right? Like, it's very hard, because we think, well, I can't do that because then nobody will like me, and then I'll die somehow. There's not really a whole thread that like tells me how I'm gonna die, but I just know that it's gonna happen. So I gotta make sure I don't do that. And so we have to stop and be like, oh, okay, that's not true. That's a feeling, right? But it's not a fact. It's a feeling that I'm gonna die, because I'm getting stuck in my childhood attachment system. So now I can remember, as an adult, I'm not actually gonna die. I can make it on the streets. I am capable of keeping myself safe. And so if this relationship devolves or dissolves, I'm still okay. But having children activates our adult attachment system, right? Because we have to attach with our children. And then it also activates all of our old attachment trauma, all of our unmet attachment needs from our childhood are going to be played out in our own children. And so that's what makes it so hard for moms to stay cool when their kid is freaking out, because it's like tricking us. And we're like, well, this is me. because our brain doesn't realize that it's not me, it's them. I'm not them, I'm separate from them. And so when we can separate that role, we can do a much better job of helping our kids learn and helping our kids calm down. And so that's our job, is to remember, like, oh yeah, wait, that's not true. If ever I feel like it's like life or death, if I have this sense of urgency that is making me like feel like I literally have to act now or everything will just implode, I'm probably misreading the situation. Most of the time, I'm not in that level of danger. Of course, there are emergencies, right? That's possible, so don't ignore those. But for the most part, when our kid is having a meltdown, that's not one of them. So we can stop and be like, okay, I have a minute. I'm gonna just get myself together. And then I'm gonna be like, I really see that you're going through a hard time right now. And I'm with you, and I'll support you through this hard time. And we'll work it out together. I've got your back. That's the brand. I've got your back. I care about you. I will have your back always, even when you're yelling at me, even when you're throwing a fit, even when you're telling me that you hate me and that you're I'm ruining your life, even when you're breaking things or, saying horrible, hurtful things, because kids are mean sometimes. I'm still going to love you, and I've got your back, because that's my role in this. And so we have to kind of detach ourselves from that a little bit, because that will really, really, really trigger us to freak out. And then we're going to try to like engage, and then it's this whole power struggle, and then nothing gets done. So they learn how to be treated from the way you treat them. They learn what to expect from others and how they will treat themselves by the way you treat them, what you expect from yourself towards them. Their unmet attachment needs will become lifelong traumatic reenactments in every single relationship that they have as an adult. I promise. And that's why it's so hard, because any of your unmet attachment needs are also reenacting themselves in your relationships, including the relationship with your kid. And so that's why just sitting with them and showing up for them and saying, you deserve for me to care for you. You deserve for me to sit here with you and help you feel physically and emotionally safe, even though you're behaving in a way that is not very nice, and we'll talk about that later. You still deserve this from me, so I'm going to give it to you. And so that's going to help them calm down faster. So that's called co-regulation. Children don't know how to regulate their own nervous systems. They actually can't. It's impossible. They don't have that skill. It's just not developed in their brains. They learn that from you. So when you are able to sit with them and be like, hey, we're safe right now, then they can be like, oh, okay, cool. Their nervous system is looking to you, that attachment, that neuroception, that safety. Your safety is their safety. And it can be that simple, not in a cold way, like you're fine, right? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, hey, I see this is, you're feeling really bad. I've got you. We're gonna get through this together. I've got your back, you're not alone. That's what they deserve, that's what they need, and then that's what they'll get from their future relationships. And so when our kids are dysregulated or freaking out or acting out or seeking validation from other people, and you start to see those warning signs that they're maybe getting needs met in an unhealthy way, we can stop and say, like, okay, I'm noticing that this is happening, and it's not their fault, but they have a need that's not being met, and so I need to step in now. I need to say, like, okay, I've got you, right? Like, it's not always a choice with kids this age, because what they're going through is that transition from childhood attachment to adult attachment. They're going from, I need my family, to I need my community. I need to have one person care for me versus I need to care for myself and get my needs met out here from other people. Because as adults, that's what we need, right? So they're in this weird middle of like, I'm not yet an adult, but I'm also still not like super a kid. So like, I have these conflicts like biologically, and it's very confusing, and I don't know what's happening. And I'm also just terrible at regulating my own emotions, and I don't have a frontal lobe, so I'm basically just a mess. So we have to kind of stop them and say, like, okay, I understand that this is happening, peer groups, right? Like, we can sort of validate that. It feels like the end of the world if we're not getting along with our friends, or if we're not being picked, or if somebody breaks up with us, or if somebody doesn't like us, or if our friend likes the person that we like, and then they went and like flirted with them, and they knew that I liked them, and it was really rude of them, and that sucks. Like, those are like end of the world type things for our kids. And so we need to be able to be like, man, that sucks. That's the worst. Sometimes we just need to co-sign on their rage and pain. And we need to be like, you're right, that was not okay. We don't want to talk about like, what could I have done differently in order to have not prevented that from happening? Or like, it's not a teaching moment. It's a being moment. That's co-regulation. They'll learn later. We'll teach them later. But we know when they're in distress like that, they're not going to learn anyway. So we might as well just save our breath. We're just going to stop. We're going to give them a hug. And then they're going to trust us and know that we accept them. And we don't judge their misplaced emotions and their, extreme mood swings. We're not judging them for that, because we know that that's just happening. It's not their fault. They didn't choose it. Nobody chooses to act like that. It's not fun. So if they could stop, they would. And so this co-regulation is how they learn how to stop on their own, because they're seeing that happen with you. They're able to get that model. It has to be imprinted. Without that model, they'll never learn. And then they'll continue to reenact that throughout the rest of their future life, looking for that need to be met, that need for acceptance, that need to be heard, that need to be valued and validated. That's what we're all going out to seek if that need wasn't met in childhood. So we can meet that need, and then our kids will be in healthy relationships. And so there's a handful of very specific things that kids need in order to meet these needs, so they don't have to go and seek them from an unhealthy or unsafe person later. They need safety, right? I've got you. You're safe with me. They need that attachment. No matter what you do, no matter how you act, never going anywhere. I'm going to take care of you because you deserve for me to do that. No matter how you act. Even if you just broke a window or hit me or whatever, you're going to have a consequence, right? Like, there's discipline, but I still love you. You don't have to earn that. You get that all the time. Never gets taken away like your cell phone. So acknowledgement, right? I see you're really upset. I understand, and it's really hard to feel this way. I'm so sorry you're going through this. And acceptance, like, it's okay. Right? It's okay to feel really angry at this person or at this thing that happened, because it's unfair. And it's the worst. And I want you to know that that's okay. And I felt like that too. And we're going to get through it. Don't know how, doesn't matter, but I got you. And support, right? I'm here with you. We'll do this together. You're never going to have to figure this out alone. You don't have to do this alone. You don't have to resolve these conflicts, because you and me, we're going to brainstorm this stuff, right? We'll make a vision board. I don't know, but we're going to get it together. We're going to do it, and you're not alone. And so we need to be able to encourage them. Hey, this is a really hard thing, but it's not too hard. You can do it. And if you feel like you can't, I'm just going to sit right here next to you, and I'm just going to like watch you while you do it. Or I'll just do my own thing. No worries. Hit me up if you need me, but I'm right here, right? So you come get me if you need me. So sometimes they don't need you to actually help them. They just need you to be in their presence. And that encouragement and support and sense of safety is the one we want them to reenact forever. That's their reenactment, their lifelong reenactment that we're building here. And you can build that. And it's so much simpler than trying to like teach them every single possible thing that they can know about every single possible thing. Sometimes we just don't need to do that, and we can just be with them And that they get more from that than anything else. They can read books and Google stuff later.